Oh, it came out.
One more minute and then we'll get started. Okay, good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for joining the May meeting of Brooklyn Community Board 6. I'm Peter Fleming, the chair of the Community Board. We're going to take things a little bit out of order. I'm going to speak briefly, and then I'm going to recognize Rachel, who chairs our Permits and Licenses Committee, because she has a conflict, so she needs to present her votes right away. As you're probably aware, we've been working with the Department of City Planning, who has been working with a judge with regard to the Gowanus rezoning hearings. And I'm pleased to say that we have an agreement. We don't have all of the details yet, but we have a basic agreement. On June 3rd, there will be a combined hearing for Community Board 2 and Community Board 6. That will have two components. There will be a Zoom component for those who prefer to join in that manner. There will also be an in-person component in J.J. Byrne Park near the old stone house for those who either cannot or do not wish to join via Zoom. And through both means, people will have an opportunity to testify. We're still working out exactly, how you register, how we're going to alternate between in-person speakers and online speakers, and those details will be forthcoming. That will be hosted by myself and probably somebody from Community Board 2. And then somebody will also host the online portion. So to further that, and to keep up with the schedule, we're going to have to move our June board meeting probably by 1 week to the third Wednesday in June. And that date is June 16th. That will enable us to have a rain date of June 10th for the in-person hearing in J.J. Byrne Park. And it will also enable our Landmarks and Land Use Committee to meet after they hear the testimony from the community on hopefully June 3rd. And the exact date of that hasn't been determined yet, but it will be after the hearing. So right now we're looking at the Department of City Planning will make a presentation next Monday to our Economic Waterfront Development, Community Development and Housing Committee. That's on May 17th. And they'll focus on, the affordable housing and the Gowanus IBZ vision part of the plan, which is the purview of that committee. Then on the regular Landmarks and Land Use Committee on on May 27th, they will come and make a presentation and answer questions. That will be followed by the public hearing, hopefully on June 3rd, rain date on June 10th. And then after that hearing on the 3rd, the following week, there will be a Landmarks and Land Use Committee meeting where members of that committee can consider the testimony that they heard on June the 3rd and make a recommendation. And then the community board will act on that recommendation at a meeting on the 3rd Wednesday, which is June 16th. If we have any members of the public on here, I want to remind you that only community board members may speak at full community board meetings except during community session. So if you have something to say about the Gowanus rezoning, you need to say it at the committee meeting or at the public hearing on June 3rd, either online or in JJ Byrne Park. So that should keep the proceedings on June 16th a little bit more orderly. But we're essentially will start in the afternoon of June 3rd, and we will continue as late as I think 10 o'clock, although that hasn't finally been determined, to hear testimony if there are enough people to fill up that time period. Some of these dates are subject to change based on whether or not we need to exercise the rain date. But for now, that's where we're at. I also wanted to say, last meeting, we had some comments from people on Butler Street with regard to the siting of a city bike location. And I've had some conversations with a woman whose husband is in a wheelchair in his 80s and has been blocked from access to the street. So we've written to the Department of Transportation, which is ultimately responsible for citing these sites, to point out the concerns that the community brought to us at our April meeting. That letter will go out today, and we hope that they'll at least take some heed and perhaps some talk of perhaps creating a loading zone. But again, that decision is entirely up to the Department of Transportation. When they're citing those city bike sites, they advise us of what they're doing, and if we have a meeting, we hear testimony from members of the community about it, but we do not vote to approve it. So it is not within our control to say yay or nay, yes, we think this is a great location, or no, this is a terrible location. So we are doing what is within our power, which is to make sure that the issue is brought to the attention of the Department of Transportation, and hope that they will act accordingly. So I will probably repeat these dates at the end of the meeting in case we're joined by any other people. But for now, we're going to go to Rachel, the chair of the Light Permits and Licenses Committee, because she has some votes to bring to us and she has a conflict.
Thank you. All right. So can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So we had 3 applicants for our meeting. The first was Masalawala, which is an Indian restaurant. Sorry, first just start out, we had a quorum for all 3 applicants. So Masalawala is an Indian restaurant that had originally been on the Lower East Side. And they are going to be moving to 365 Fifth Avenue. The owner is, the applicant is opening this space. He also
Someone needs to mute their line, please.
Sorry, he runs 3 other restaurants, but this is sort of he's moving the one that's on the Lower East Side to this space. It's going to be a family-run restaurant, regional Indian, 9 people at the bar. His prior other restaurants have had 0 complaints, and there's been no other issues with his restaurants in the past. And so we voted unanimously oh, there will be a backyard and garden space. And they agreed that area will be closing at 11 p.m. on weekdays, 12 a.m. on weekends. The original application didn't have that, but they were changing that. So we unanimously voted to approve their application.
So are there any questions for Rachel on this? Remember to unmute yourself. Hearing none, we're going to take a vote. If anybody objects to this, please state so in the chat. Otherwise, we're going to assume you're in favor of it. Oh, Glenn, did you have a question? I'm sorry. You have to unmute.
Yeah, I didn't have a question on this. It was about the earlier thing, but we'll do that after permits. And
Yeah, let
licenses.
Rachel finish.
Exactly.
Okay. Again, if you are against this, say so in the chat. If not, we're going to assume you approve it. Rachel, please move on to your next motion.
Okay. The next applicant is Pecking House. There's a question, when does the Indian restaurant open? We didn't have that. Sorry. This next applicant is Pecking House. They are opening in the old Santa Fe location on 62 7th Avenue. They've apparently been operating in pop-up locations. This is going to be a fried chicken spot. They are looking to do, there's no outdoor space. This is the first restaurant for both of them, but they've been doing these pop-up places. He's a trained chef in fine dining, and they wanted to open in Brooklyn because they felt that this was an area that had strongly rallied around the community. The community had rallied around restaurants, and they're going to be 11 a.m. to 10 a.m. every day, looking to be family-oriented, community-oriented, casual, order at the bar with an open kitchen. And so again, we felt it's a great addition, going to be a great addition to the community, and a unanimous vote in favor of their application.
Okay, any questions for Rachel on this? Hearing none, we're going to assume you're in favor of it unless you note in the chat that you're against it. Not seeing any. Rachel, please go on to your next motion.
And the last was an application for 249 4th Avenue. This is the, I don't think that's the right look. That's the one that didn't apply. Didn't show up, sorry. This is the Mission Dolores location. These are two women who, it's their first time opening a bar, but it's an interesting location because it's the Mission Dolores spot, and they have sort of an interior courtyard, which is an outdoor space. But it's going to be 18 tables. They might have one karaoke night. The old license, which they are agreeing to have the same thing. It had a stipulation of no patron dancing. I'm sorry, they actually do operate the Hop Shop at 121 Columbia Street, and there was a person from who lived right there and said that she had no complaints about it. Lives above there and overlooks the outdoor patio, and said it's very quiet, it's community space, and they're great neighbors. So she said that we're lucky to have them coming here as well. So they also agreed that they would speak with the residents in the surrounding buildings because of the outdoor area in that middle spot. It does have soundproofing on the walls. And this place does plan to open within the next 4 to 6 weeks. And we also found no issues with their application and voted unanimously to approve.
Thanks, Rachel. Are there any questions for Rachel on this? Joanne, remember you have to unmute yourself.
Yeah. Hi. This is more a point of clarification. What's the current status on dancing and this kind of?
Well, they're not there. It's part of their application that they.
Yeah. Why does it have to be stipulated? Because my understanding was it's not allowed, but I kind of wish it were.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's just something that's part of their license that they won't allow it.
Okay.
I don't know.
Anybody else have a question? Hearing none, if you are against this motion for any reason, please, so yes, no dancing.
Yes,
if
no
you're
dancing.
Please note this in the chat. Otherwise, we're going to assume you're in favor of it. And I am going to recognize Joanne Simon, who has joined us to speak with us. And Joanne, please remember to unmute.
Thank you.
Here, I have a question of Rachel.
Oh,
before.
yeah.
Do you need a motion to disapprove the one that didn't show, or are they just moving
Oh,
on to something else?
they were moved to the next. They're apparently coming to the next.
Okay, as
meeting.
long as it's
Yeah.
together.
Thank you.
This year anyway, leave them home, let them work remotely, start their 10 months in July, and then, yeah.
Joanne Simon, are you here?
Yes, I am here.
Please go ahead and speak. Assemblywoman Joanne Simon.
I was gonna say what you might not find.
Sorry, I was juggling another Zoom. and I had to I was on and had to leave and come back. Sorry. So hello, how is everybody?
Good.
Good to see you tonight. Thank you so much. Listen, I just wanted to give people a little update on what's been going on in Albany. If you're on my email list, you probably got an email about our budget and what we were able to do. If you're not on my email list, let us know and we'll put you on it. Number one, we were able to extend the eviction moratorium and also provide significant funds that will be used to pay people's rent. Right? So that the real issue is not that people shouldn't pay rent, but that the landlords should be able to get the rent so they can keep their buildings up, they can pay their mortgages, they can pay their taxes. And so we are doing that to the tune of many millions of dollars. And so I'm very proud of that. And the moratorium is now extended to August 31st. So that is good. And by that time, I think we should have things a little bit more righted economically. And also we will have many more people who are vaccinated, and we should have a better handle on the safety. We passed safe staffing for nurses so that now the hospitals and nursing homes, there's 2 different bills that have sufficient staffing, which has been a persistent problem for years, and it certainly has been a pronounced problem during COVID. The other thing we did is we restored voting rights to people who were formerly incarcerated. You know, if you were out on parole, for example, you would not be able to vote until you were done with all of that requirement. But now you can, in fact, you can. So once you're out, even if you're on parole or probation, you will be able to vote, and that's very important. So we just also today, this week actually, passed automatic voter registration and no excuse absentee ballots. So that will be on the ballot in November as a referendum, so that and it doesn't have to go to the governors, as you know. And it was a constitutional change. We just passed it the second time, and it will be voted on in November by the voters. And I have a feeling that voters are going to vote to have no excuse absentee ballots so that they can vote by mail. We're doing a lot in New York to make sure that people can vote and vote more easily, and I'm very proud of that. We also fully funded our foundation aid, which is the Campaign for Fiscal Equity. Some of you may remember there was a lawsuit started 27 years ago. It took 13 years to get through the courts to recompense schools that had been systematically underfunded in many of our urban areas, serving our students who are most in need. We are finally now going to be fully funding that Campaign for Fiscal Equity, billions of dollars over the next 3 years. And then the state is also going to add to the pot and continue that full funding subsequently after the federal money that we currently have runs out. We'll be able to continue that. So I'm very proud of having been part of that. Also, we passed the Halt Solitary Confinement Act, which means we will not be doing solitary confinement in New York anymore, except for very limited circumstances. Too often people languished for years in solitary confinement, which is really torture. I'm very proud to have been a sponsor of that bill since I joined the Assembly, and I'm really glad that we finally passed it and the governor has signed it, so that's great. We also are regulating marijuana. Marijuana is now not only decriminalized, but we will actually be creating a whole industry, which I'm very excited about, that will be delivering the 40% of the revenue from the marijuana taxation will be used to support communities who have been particularly disadvantaged by the criminalization of marijuana. And we will also be ensuring that they are able to participate and really jump in this industry, in this very beginning industry of adult use marijuana at all levels. And it's a huge industry. I'm very, very excited for all of the opportunity that the marijuana industry will be bringing to people, to young people, to people who are in advertising and packaging and delivery and chemistry. It's just like a really great opportunity. I went to a big medical marijuana grow site a few years ago in Rochester, and it's just fascinating. And it will be even more fascinating that this will be adult use and won't have all of the restrictions, for example, that medical marijuana has. So I'm really excited about that. I'm also excited that I have a bill to prevent future pandemics and protect against infectious wildlife diseases, which is sort of a big bill, but really one of the things we've learned is through climate change and deforestation and the bringing of wildlife closer to humans and to domesticated animals. That's how these viruses jump from one species to the other. And that's how these pandemics have started. So we're really looking forward to sort of curtailing that in New York and protect New Yorkers against a possible new pandemic, because we know something else is coming down the pike. I also want to just mention, I did mention about some voting, and I noticed that Assemblymember Carroll is here. One of the bills that we passed was his, or maybe two of them were his, so he'll talk about that a little bit more. I just want to keep people a little bit up to date on the BQE, which I know is an issue for many people. We have a truck weight bill. We are trying to get that passed before the end of the year. That would be a weight and motion sensor that would actually ticket an overweight truck. We would have it at various places along the highway because we really want to keep them off the triple cantilever, which is deteriorating rapidly. And those overweight trucks really exacerbate that. So I'm working very hard to get that done. And I know I will have the support of my colleagues whose districts are impacted by this as well. And then we also have a BQE governance authority, which would create a new authority to deal with the entire I-278 corridor, because we know that the problems we have been started by doing things piecemeal, by Robert Moses building X and then building Y and then building Z. And it's the connections that make things more difficult. And it's the fact that, we're all connected throughout this corridor, and we have to find new ways of doing this, ways of doing it in a way that is more just it allows us to have a just transition off of fossil fuels. So I'm really excited about the possibility of that happening. We are working very hard on that. And let me just say that, let's see if there's anything else I wanted to mention. I want to give a quick report. And then the other thing that I'm just very pleased to report, we did Dyslexia Awareness Day again this year. joined by a number of colleagues, including Assemblymember Carroll as a co-sponsor. And we did it remotely this year. We had over 200 people that participated. We had programs on systemic racism and the school to prison pipeline. We had the Gloria Jerry Pinkney, who is, Jerry is a renowned illustrator and his wife Gloria is a writer. And they spoke very passionately. Jerry is dyslexic himself. And he's 80. So he talked about his life as a young Black man with dyslexia when nobody knew what it was, and his incredible gifts as an illustrator and how he's been able to communicate through those gifts of being through his art. And so we recorded that, and we will be getting those recordings, making them available for people who want to watch them. So I'm really excited to report about that. So I will leave it at that. And certainly if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. I see that maybe Senator Schumer might have joined us, and so he probably gets first dibs on your time.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Yes, we're honored that we've been joined by New York State Senator Chuck Schumer, who is probably has a few words to say. So Senator Schumer, if I can just remind you that you need to unmute yourself before you start to speak, but otherwise we'd love to hear what you have to say. If you're speaking, we're not hearing you, so.
Hey, this is Steve on the senator's staff. He is, his computer is joined, but he is not quite on just yet.
Okay. How about
I will try to give you a 3-minute warning.
Yeah, we'll Assemblyman Carroll, why don't you speak, and then we'll go back to Senator Schumer.
That's perfect. Thank you.
Good evening, Peter, and good evening, Community Board 7. And whenever Senator Schumer gets here, I will stop talking. This week in Albany, Assemblymember Simon alluded to, we were able to pass a number of great voting reforms. So I was proud to be the sponsor of the constitutional amendment that will now allow for New York State, if the voters approve and the legislature passes the enacting legislation, to have same-day voter registration. We also passed the constitutional amendment to allow for no excuse absentee voting. This has been the last 3 sessions of the legislature. We have been passing different voting reforms every single year to bring things like early voting. We did campaign finance last year. We've done a number of things to make it easier for folks to register, to vote, and to participate in our democracy. And so I think that's an absolutely wonderful thing. Joanne covered almost everything we've done in the last year. So I don't want to retread all of that, but I'm just going to say ditto. And we've got a lot more to do in the next 6 weeks before we close the session. There are a number of bills on the environment, on education, on a whole host of things that could make our state a better place. I'm just going to highlight, one of them, a bill of mine about decarbonizing the concrete industry and really making sure that we follow through on our goals to reduce New York's carbon emissions by 80% by 2040 and to bring them to net zero by 2050. It's so important. We were able to save Local Law 97 this year, which will make sure that large buildings do reduce their carbon footprint. And, it's one of those essential things. If anybody has any issues as we're reopening from COVID and my office could be helpful, be it a small business, be it something with your child's school or anything in between, my office is always open. But that's all I've got to say. I know you all have a lot of important work. If there are any questions, I'd love to answer them, or I can cede the rest of my time to Senator Schumer.
Great, Bobby, thank you. Yes, it gives me great pleasure once again to introduce Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer. It feels good to say that. And Senator Schumer, if you have some comments you'd like to make, please go ahead. And remember, you need to unmute before you start speaking.
Was he on? I don't.
I saw it said Senator Schumer joined a few minutes ago.
No, it's just his, I'm talking to his staff. It's just it's his he's in DC and he's going to jump on. So I will give you once he gives me a 3-minute heads up, I'll pass along the heads up.
Okay, so we had a couple of questions. Glenn, I'm going to answer your question first.
So, Peter, you mentioned that you didn't have all the details for the public hearing. The 2 locations could be problematic, so it's important that we know what those details are. Perhaps you discuss them and you can share more information. One thing, I mean, the first thing that needs to be said is that a joint public hearing is not really allowed under the city charter, my understanding. And this could open us up to future lawsuits if we're not sticking to the city charter. So that's number one. Number two is, how are we going to manage these people? You mentioned that we could possibly go back and forth from the in-person in the park to the Zoom virtual meeting. But yeah, I'd like more detail on how that's
sure.
going to be
The judge has asked us not to reveal some of those details because she's planning to issue a further order that covers some of those. I'm privy to what some of them are, but the Department of City Planning is planning to help us administer the process. They're committed a large number of staff and other resources. I think they have 1,000-member Zoom room ready for this. So they're going to assist us. They're going to assist us in managing it. Perhaps Alec, the chair of the Land Use Committee, has more to say on it. But again, we were asked not to reveal some of those details. As soon as we know them and have been given permission to reveal them, we will be happy to share them with you.
Okay, one more thing, Peter. Because we're likely to have a lot of people, this is a big deal. I'm concerned that the joint meeting means we have even greater numbers attending from both Community Board 2 and Community Board 6, which is really going to lengthen the whole time and maybe deter people from giving testimony if they've got to wait in the park for, I don't know, 4 or 5 hours.
There are only
not knowing when they're going to go. So wait a minute, let me finish. I want to suggest that, perhaps there's some way that we can allow people to speak their 2 minutes, their 3 minutes, whatever it is that's decided. Allow them to take a video with their phone, upload it to the community board so that they don't have to sit around for 5 hours waiting for their turn. I just tossed that out there. I think that might be constructive.
Before I let Alec speak further, I'm just going to say that Community Board 2 only has 4 blocks of the rezoning. So we're not expecting a groundswell of interest from members of that community. So we don't think that will be too problematic. But since the litigation included a reference to the fact that Community Board 2 should be part of the process, they're included. And they expect to have the chair and vice chair of their news committee on, but they do not expect to have or need a significant involvement in it, although we're happy to hear from any member of that community that wishes to speak.
So
and Alex, do you have anything further to say? Glenn, I don't want to conduct a dialogue on this. I'm happy to talk to you about it separately.
I wanted to present my idea for how we might streamline this to collect these testimonies in advance and then just queue them up. I throw that in the hopper for your consideration.
Again, most of this is being dealt with by the court, so I'm reluctant to introduce too many new ideas into it right now because the judge is about to issue her final ruling on it. But to the extent that we can, I'll ask Mike to communicate that to the Department of City Planning, and if they think
and I would just say, sorry, I'm not trying to jump Alec again here, but I would just say that in my district manager report, one of the things I'm going to post is, and it's on all our social media pages, is our link tree, which has the DEIS and a lot of other information, but it also has the comment form. And if we want to adjust that accordingly, when we are given the go ahead towards, signing up and register, and that sort of an option where we can say, hey, if you want to submit your testimony specifically for this hearing, it can be done in advance or however long we're allowed to, or whatever. But yeah, that sort of thing, I think that no, I mean, I think, as I understand it, the goal of this is to ensure that as many people as possible that want to participate can. And any way we can help that, we don't have the same capacities that DCP does to, they're giving us more people than we have. But nonetheless, I think that is something where we can utilize it. So we'll work on that sort of a process.
I think my idea would allow people to present charts, photos, whatever.
Yeah, no, maybe we could. Yeah, maybe
more
we could do
like,
something where we could accept anything they'd want.
yeah.
On that
I'm just
sort of
trying to.
stuff.
I'm just trying
Yeah.
to make the process better, fairer.
Like upload to a drive or something like that it can be shared and everyone can kind of see it in that way.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then you
So,
can
yeah,
queue,
Alec,
you can queue it up.
Sure.
Hey, I'm done.
Thank you, Glenn. I think that this has been an iterative process that's a little complicated because the court has been supervising the appropriate procedures in the court's view, right? So it's been a conversation between Peter and the leadership of CB2 and the city, what they're capable of doing, and the court. And ultimately, it's up to the court to approve procedures that the court believes are lawful. And that's what we're all waiting on. Now, once we have a firm idea of what the court's going to require, which I think we're going to have soon, then there's all kinds of ways we could talk about supplementing what the court's going to require. But we also have to work within what the city, it's going to provide the sort of back end here, the sort of back office administrative capacity to facilitate this very complex, both in-person and remote meeting, what they're capable of doing. As to the suggestion that it's unlawful to hold a joint public hearing, we have a court order requiring a joint public hearing. And so that's going to be a tough hill to climb. But of course, people are entitled to file lawsuits saying whatever they'd like. But right now, as a community board, what we're focused on doing is just following exactly what the court has suggested we need to do in order to meet our charter mandated responsibility to hold a public hearing. And as to the idea that we're not going to have sufficient opportunity for people to participate, I think that's why the court has bent over backwards to create this in-person and virtual component. And it's going to start early in the day and go late into the night. And we're going to be there hearing everybody who wants to talk. And if everybody who wants to talk that day doesn't get an opportunity to, there's a spillover day a week later, so that there'll be another chance to comment. So hopefully the procedures that the court has set up will ameliorate some of those concerns, Glenn. And in any event, it will be all pursuant to a court order.
Great, thank you. Any word on Senator Schumer? No? Okay, Karen, you had a question. You have to unmute yourself.
Is Joanne Simon still on?
Yep.
Okay, I had a question. She mentioned about, which has been an inquiry for many years when this bill came upon. Joanne, do you know when this is effective for people on parole?
Which bill are you talking about?
For people on parole or probation to vote?
I believe it was effective immediately, but there may be a lead up time in order to get people, re-registered, for example. So I'll have to double check it. We'll check it. If you call my office, I'll let you know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you let the board know?
Sure.
So we can filter it. Thank you.
Yeah, I just don't happen to remember. It might have been a 60 day, 180 days or something like that.
Okay.
But
I'm
it
just
has
trying to
been
figure
signed. The
out-
governor has signed it, so.
Okay, I was just trying to figure out if people could vote.
Sure.
This time around. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Joanna, did you have a question?
Yeah, hi. I think we lost Bobby, but I just wanted to thank him and Joanne for co-sponsoring a bill I've been following, which is the Climate and Community Investment Act. And I wanted to get their senses of how realistic it is that it's going to move forward in this session and what we can do to help push it over. Because it basically funds the CLCPA.
Mhm.
And when Bobby was speaking, he mentioned that they're goals, but they're actually not goals anymore. They're mandates. And we really have to find money to make all these programs happen. So what can we do is my question.
Well, I would, you don't have to write to your legislator because your legislators are on the bill. So, I would make sure that you talk to your friends and neighbors who are represented by people who are not sponsors and ask them to reach out to their sponsors. There's a lot of organizing around this, as you know, so there's a real army of environmentally active people who are supporting this and are you can advocate together. I will say that we have 14 legislative days left in the session. We're done June 10th, I believe. So what we get done is going to be constrained by the calendar. And so I'm not overly sanguine that we'll be able to get something this big that includes dollars. What will happen is the governor will want to do it in next year's budget because he doesn't really want to do anything that provides money or that encumbers the state in any way outside of the budget process. And so even if it passed, my guess is he'd veto it and say, let's do it next year in the budget. So that's just my own personal sense. I don't have any more information than that at this time, but that's just my sense of it.
Thanks. Bridget, you had a question?
I didn't have a question. I just wanted to say respectfully to my community board and the chair that I would have preferred to have the Gowanus rezoning meeting just be CB6, not with a joint hearing.
Not our choice.
I just wanted just to say that, okay? And I just appreciate the fact that we will have that discussion that Glenn spoke about, but I just wanted to say that. I appreciate you allowing me to speak.
Sure.
If I can say something about that, I realize nobody asked me a question, but I'm very pleased that there will be a spillover day. One of the problems we had in the Atlantic Yards hearing, which went on god awful 12 o'clock at night, 1 o'clock in the morning, something like that, is that Eric, you're scratching your head. I know you were there. It was quite the circus in many respects, but people started leaving because it was just too late. And they did have a second hearing, but it didn't count as a hearing. And so they didn't take the same minutes and they didn't enter it on the record. So I think what's really important is if it does spill over, that there's a record made of that and it actually becomes part of a hearing. So it's a two-part hearing and not like a hearing and then a day when you can vent kind of thing. So I'm, whatever influence you have in the court and it's outlining those rules, I think that would be a very important thing for community.
And last but not least, Tiffany, you had a question. Remember to unmute.
Hello, good evening, everyone. My question is more so for Joanne Simon. With the new marijuana initiative that the city is taking, are they opening up opportunities for entrepreneurship for residents in the community, and especially in urban communities, as well as education? Okay, well as educational programs, because I know we. Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. I thought you were done. I apologize.
No. So that was a big concern of mine because for so often we are squeezed out of the situation, especially with opportunities like this. I just want to make sure that the community is also being given the opportunity to partake in it and benefit off these opportunities coming into the neighborhood. Also with that, are they going to have some type of substance and drug abuse initiative going on as well, since we are opening, since marijuana is being legalized? Are they doing anything else for drug and substance abuse in the neighborhood too?
Well, the Marijuana Regulation and Tax Act provides for that entrepreneurship in communities that have been most impacted by the criminalization of marijuana. So that the opportunities you're talking about are exactly what we did. We were very, very intentional in the Marijuana Regulation and Tax Act. And in fact, we almost could have passed this 2 years ago, but the governor wanted to do it a little differently and we held firm. And I want to just thank our majority leader, Crystal Peoples-Stokes, who was the lead sponsor on this bill, who really toughed it out. And what we got was, in fact, a really a great bill that is one of, I think, a leader in the country in addressing the social justice issues of this, as well as the economic justice issues of this. And that is going to be coming down. There are various parts of the bill that are effective at various times, because we really have to set up the licensing process. We have to set up the access process for licensing, for example, and address it's a very big bill, and we need to address different parts of it become regulated at different times, including just, how do we sell marijuana, right? And what kinds of marijuana, and et cetera, et cetera. So all of that has to be done. That will take a bit of time. And so it's going to be a kind of a rolling effective date as the industry comes into being. So that'll be very carefully monitored. I don't believe that the city has any particular role in implementing the legislation. But a lot of times what we do is the state will fund things by giving money to the city, and the city then implements. So obviously, we've already been working with NYPD to they know not to arrest anybody for using marijuana, and also, this is going to be an industry, I think, is going to end up being not smoking. It's going to be very much going to be about edibles. So it's also for any of you who are good in the kitchen, this might be your opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you,
You're
everyone.
welcome.
Third time is the charm. It gives me a great pleasure to introduce Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, a senator from the state of New York and a resident of Community Board 6.
Well, thank you, Peter. And it's great to be, I speak each week to a couple of the community boards to let them know what's going on in DC, particularly now with COVID. So it's great to speak to my own community board. I've been a member of I've been a resident of Community Board 6 since 1983. And I think was it always, Joanne, Board 6? Might have been Board 7 at one point. I can't remember.
I don't know, I think it was 6, but I could be wrong.
I'm going to speak on a few things, but I just want to say this. I heard Assembly Member Simon talking about marijuana legalization. And the New York bill is a great bill. She is right. In fact, I helped push it. We had they didn't want to make it some people on the second floor, as you know, didn't want to make it a social justice issue. And we pushed to get it. And now Senators Booker, Wyden, and I will be introducing similar legislation federally, so we can have the whole country legal, with marijuana be legal in the short future. So you did a great job on that bill, and making sure that it's not just legalization, important as that is, but it's social justice, that the communities that paid such a price for marijuana being so highly criminalized, same as crack or cocaine or heroin, get back some of the recompense, and making sure that records are expunged, so that a young person who has a little marijuana in his pocket, but because it was such a high level crime, ridiculously, had a serious criminal record and could never really get a good job or get back on their feet, was one of the great wastes of human resources in this country. And the state has done that, and we hope to do that at the federal level. Anyway, it's great to be here. Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Mike. And thank you, all of my neighbors. As you know, well, I'll tell you one quick story. Iris and I were raised in this, I tell a lot of stories, but this is one real. Iris and I were raised in the southern part of Brooklyn. Her father was a cab driver. My father was an exterminator. And we lived down there. When we were married in 1980, we lived down there. In 1982, Park Slope was added into our district. And Iris said, let's move up there. This was the redistricting. I had been elected to Congress in 1980. And she said, let's move up there. I said, why? She said, well, it's 5 subway stops closer, because she was commuting into Manhattan. She had a job at the city government. And I said, okay, let's get a brownstone. And she said, no. And in those days, 1982, a lot of the brownstones, for those of you who live there, may remember, they had fire escapes all over because they were single room occupancies. And crime was rather high. They said you couldn't go past 7th Avenue. Don't walk on 5th Avenue. I think about a third of the stores were sort of burnt out. Anyway, So I said, let's get a brownstone. She said, she lived in a Mitchell Lama project her whole life. And I hate to tell you the name of that project in Coney Island. Trump Village. 'Cause it was built by Fred Trump, Donald Trump's father. Anyway, she said, I'm not going to live in a brownstone. I've never lived in a house. You're going to be away in Washington 3-4 days a week. I'd been elected to Congress. We got to find an apartment. So we see this apartment listed at 9 Prospect Park West. And it was beautiful and it was fancy, much fancier than we had ever known. But in those days, there was a great recession and interest rates were 19%. So nobody wanted to buy apartments and take out a mortgage at 19%. And in those days, you couldn't refinance in New York. The law was the bank would get you for 19% the rest of your mortgage. So we go up there and they say, how much? And they said, $157,000. And I said to Iris, we can't afford that. That's much too much money. And she said, you always reach for real estate. So we stretched and we bought it. I found there was one bank, actually the Independent Savings Bank, which is in Community Board 6, or was then in Community Board 6 at Court Street and Atlantic Avenue, and they would let you refinance. So we bought the apartment. A few years later, we refinanced at 8%, and that's the only place we've ever lived, at 9 Prospect Park West since 1982. And our children, who are now out of the house, and let's see, they live in downtown. One of them lives in Brooklyn Heights. I can't read the map here. Do you have Brooklyn Heights, CB6?
Yeah.
No,
that's
so
community.
he's not in yours. And the other lives in downtown Brooklyn. You don't have that either, I guess. Oh, so neither of my daughters live there. But they were raised in this house and never lived anywhere else. And we have never lived anywhere else. And I just love it. Anyway, so I'm glad to be a resident of Board 6. First, I want to thank all of you for serving on the board. I know it's not easy to be a board member. I started out as a community organizer and young assembly person. And I know when things go wrong, you hear it from everybody. And when things go right, you don't hear it from anybody. So I just wanted to say thank you. Thank you for serving. I know it's not an easy job, doesn't pay very much, and yet you're doing it. So thank you for caring and representing our community. What I want to do tonight is, and I want to thank Peter, I want to thank Michael for their leadership. And I hope everybody is healthy, and I hope we're all feeling we're turning the corner. So what I want to do is talk to you about what's in our ARP bill, because there's a lot of things people don't know, and we can help with it. But first, I'll tell you my story of January 6th, which tells a little about where we're headed in Washington. So I call January 6th my day, the best of times, the worst of times. That was the opening line in Charles Dickens' book, A Tale of Two Cities. January 5th was the day of the elections in Georgia. And we knew that if we won those 2 seats, I would achieve my longtime goal of becoming majority leader in the Senate, and we'd kick Mitch McConnell out. The election was close. I stayed up all night watching the results. Tuesday night bleeds into Wednesday morning. I'm on the computer at 2 a.m. What are the results in Chatham County? What's the African-American turnout in DeKalb County? Finally, at 4 a.m., it's clear we won. What was my first reaction? Joy. You know, when you've set a goal for yourself, it could be personal, it could be professional, it could be family, it could be business, that you've worked hard to achieve for a long time, and you finally get it after many detours in the road and logs in your path. Your first reaction is natural, it's joy, and that's how I felt. My heart swelled. But within a few minutes, I had another reaction that crept up upon me very strongly and very quickly. The speed of it surprised me. And that was my second emotion. And what was it? I had a rough time figuring out the right word. And the word I've arrived at is awe, A-W-E. Not awe in the way my teenage daughters used to use it. You know, gee, Dad, that movie was awesome. But in the biblical sense, when the angels saw the face of God, they trembled in awe. And right away, it hit me the enormous responsibility placed on the shoulders of our Democratic majority, thin though it was, and of me as their leader. And what were our imperatives, our responsibilities? The first was obviously substantive. There was so much to do, not just get out of COVID, but we had a unique opportunity for the first time in a very long time to deal with so many of the problems in our society: climate, income inequality, racial injustice, democracy, perfecting the democracy, and so much more. So there was a huge substantive imperative. The second imperative was political. This was a time we could show. So many people say, it doesn't matter who I vote for. This was a time with a new president and a new majority leader, me instead of McConnell, that could actually show people we could deliver. We could deliver checks, we could deliver vaccines, we could deliver help that they weren't getting under Trump and McConnell. But third, my next imperative, maybe the strongest, was moral. And that was moral. What do I mean by that? Well, since the November election, I asked myself the question you probably asked yourself. How could 70 million people vote for such a despicable man as Donald Trump? He's the vilest, one of the vilest human beings I've ever met. He's a patent liar. He's a bigot. He's divisive. He's an egomaniac. All he cares is stuffing his little baby face with what pleases him. How did they vote for him? And I came to the conclusion that they voted for him because too many Americans had lost faith in the American dream. When you ask people, what's the American dream? You ask average people, average folks, they'd say, well, it means if I work, they'd put it simply. It means if I work hard, I'll be better off 10 years from now than I am today. And my kids will be better off than me. When people lose that faith, they don't have that optimism that has been so much in the American character, they turn to a demagogue. And they could very well turn to a far-right demagogue in 2024, worse than Trump. So if we didn't create big, bold action that would show the American people, they didn't expect us to snap our fingers and solve all the problems, but at least have a path that we were getting back so that poor people and middle-class people could have some forward future, and they'd believe in that future, we could get a dictator even worse than Donald Trump in 2024. So those were that was the awe part of it, the huge responsibility, substantive, political, and moral. Okay, I go to bed at 4:30, and I was watching all this in Prospect Park West, where we live, and I wake, I couldn't sleep, get in the car at 7, drive down to Washington. At 1 p.m., I'm on the floor of the United States Senate for the first time as the putative majority leader. And I'm only on the floor for an hour when a police officer in a big bulletproof vest with a machine gun strapped across his waist grabs me by the collar like this. I'll never forget that grip. And he says, "Senator, you're coming with me. We're in danger." I didn't know what the danger was. He had explained it to me. And you may have seen this because those security cameras overhead caught it, and they showed it at the impeachment trial. It was the first time I had ever seen the film of it. But they show us walking out the door. I make a right turn when I go out the Senate door. I'm walking briskly with this police officer by my side. I go through a door, then you don't see me, and 20 seconds later, I'm running out the door the other way. I was within 15 feet of these bigoted insurrectionist hooligans. Had one of them had a gun, or had two of them run to block off the door, who knows if I would have been here. And in fact, one of them was reported to look at me and say, "There's the big Jew, let's get him." Well, that was the worst of times. But now we're back on the better of times. Of the 1,000 people who invaded the Capitol, about 400 have been arrested. And I know Merrick Garland will throw the book at him, but more importantly, we've begun to produce, and that's what I want to talk about tonight, the rest of the night, and leave some time for your questions. And Peter, you'll have to tell me how much time I have. I don't do
Don't
this
worry,
all
we
the
only have one more agenda item, so we're good, Senator.
Great, thank you, Peter. So I'll have plenty of time to answer your questions as well. But here are some of the things that have been in what we have done. It's the most progressive, comprehensive piece of legislation that's passed at least since the Great Society. And it was so important. It had so many different things in it, and I will go through a whole lot of them, but let me just give you an overall example which shows the contrast between the Republicans and us. The one big bill they passed was the big tax cut for the very wealthy and the big corporations. The top 1% got 83% of the benefit of their bill. You know how much the top 1% got in our bill? Zero. And the lowest 20%, income will rise an average of 20%. And when you're in the bottom 20% and you are worried about feeding your children, paying the rent, that 20% is a real godsend. And we did that. So here are some of the things that go through it. We got money, of course, for the direct payments. Any individual whose income was below 75,000, a couple below 150,000, got $1,400 per kid, per person. So if you're a family of 4, you got a $5,600 check. If folks, there are people in your board area who haven't gotten those checks and who make those income limits, please let us know, because they should have gotten them by now. We extended the unemployment benefits through September. Not only did we give $300 extra on top of the state unemployment benefit, but we extended it to all kinds of people, many of whom live in Board 6 area, who were artists and others who couldn't get unemployment. The self-employed, the gig workers, the freelancers, people in non-traditional employment would get it as well. Maybe the most consequential thing we did, which is not that well known, and I want to share with you for a minute, we close to doubled the child tax credit. It's going to take half the kids in New York out of poverty. Every person, if you're a child born into poverty, you're unlikely to be properly clothed, fed, educated, healthcare, housed. And when you're 18, you're in a deep ditch. Now, many who are in that situation climb out of that ditch on their own to their credit, but many need help. And by taking half the kids out of America and out of New York in poverty, we're really helping not only them and their families, but we are helping the whole country. And here's what it does. Starting in July, so let people know, every person a single parent who makes under 75,000, a couple who makes under 150, will get $250 per child per month for a year, coming monthly, for children 6 to 17, and $300 a month for children 0 to 6. It's going to really help. And then we strengthen the EITC, the Earned Income Tax Credit, for childless workers, so they get the same kind of benefit. And it's coming in July, and let people know. So even though their stimulus checks were a one-time shot, there's going to be money for everybody. We did paid sick leave. Right now, now it's not mandated because we couldn't do that under this reconciliation type bill, but any employer who gives paid sick leave and paid family leave in the next year for the remainder of this year will be fully reimbursed by the federal government. So let employers know that. Some of them don't. Obviously, we got a lot of money for vaccines. Now there's enough money. Trump had totally screwed this thing up. But there's enough money for vaccines that anyone 16 or over can line up anywhere. And we insisted that it go to communities of color first. So I got the feds to put it in community health centers across the city, which are in poorer neighborhoods. And many of our poor people of color, have a familiarity with these community health centers. So it's not, they have to go far away. We got money for rental assistance, which the state is just beginning to give out. We got $2 billion. If people have lost their jobs and can't pay the rent, the federal government will pay their rent. So there's a rent moratorium, but the moratorium doesn't do anything because after 6 months and you owe the rent 6 months rent, you're never going to make it up. But this is now we will able to pay it. I worked with many of the progressive housing groups to make sure it goes to the right people. And if you're a small landlord, like you own a 2-family house and your tenant doesn't pay the rent, you can get some reimbursement for that as well. So that's a big thing. We also got money for mortgage assistance. If you lost your job and can't pay the mortgage,
he's doing homework.
That's going to affect people in your board, as well as utility assistance.
Oh,
okay.
hello?
Please to mute their line, please.
Thanks, Peter. We got money for SNAP, food assistance, up a 15% increase. And over the summer, we will deliver money, you know, the kids who didn't go to school, but who depend on the school breakfasts and school lunches, it will be delivered to their homes so they can get adequate nutrition. Education, we got money for the schools, $9 billion for K-12 schools, and we used Chapter 1. So the poorer schools and the inner city schools get the most money. If you gave the money just to New York State, oftentimes not Joanne's, not by her doing, but the suburban wealthy districts would get most of the money. We made sure the poorer districts like New York City got most of the money. And the money, and your school board knows this, but make sure they know, can be used for summer school for all the kids who lost out during the year, as well as for after school and nighttime programs. I grew up in Southern Brooklyn. I spent my nights at the James Madison Night Center. I might have, who knows what would have happened to me. But I spent nights playing basketball there. Now our schools can open up for using this money for night centers. We got 1.8, we got more money for childcare than has ever gotten. The childcare advocate said, we're going to give you a wish list of 50 billion. We need 50 billion. We failed them, we got 49 billion. And that money is going to open up childcare centers and daycare centers, childcare centers that have closed. Many of them closed during the COVID relief. If you know of them, let us know. Two issues that people don't know about. Oh, money for transit. The MTA was going to shut down. Not only did you get the money to keep going, but they now can do capital improvements. They didn't have to lay off people. The school boards and the libraries will get money for broadband. If there are poorer families who couldn't have broadband for their kids, the federal government will pay to have that. I met a woman in Brooklyn, in central Brooklyn. She was a healthcare worker, and I met her in June, and she said, I just saved up all my money and I bought my son, who's starting the first grade, a computer so he can learn. And then I met her a few months later and she said, I lost my job. I can't afford the 70 bucks a month to get broadband. Now we can pay for it. Tell the school boards and the libraries this money is coming quickly. And two other things that you may not know. I'm sorry, it's my daughter. Hi, Bunny, I'll call you back. Hi, I'll call you back. That is my daughter, who was raised at 9 Prospect Park West, who is with her wife visiting her in-laws in Houston. But in any case, two things people don't know. We got money for Pell Grants for people who are incarcerated. A lot of people are in prison and they want to improve themselves, but they have no money. They're not making any money, obviously. But now they'll get money. They can enroll in technical course, 2-year college course, 4-year, and get out of prison and have a good, productive life. And finally, the last thing I'll mention is this. Money for funerals. I was called up by Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez at the height of the crisis in Corona. And she said, we need money for funerals. And let me explain this. It breaks your heart when you saw those pictures of children and even young adults pushing their face against the thick hospital glass and waving goodbye to loved ones. They couldn't hug them, they couldn't touch them, they couldn't kiss them. And then adding insult to injury, they had no money. And they couldn't pay for a funeral or a burial. We still have 7,000 bodies lying in morgues. We got money, and there's now money for anyone who needs a funeral. Please let your funeral parlors know, but there's and I don't have it here. I don't know why they didn't give it to me. Does someone have, there's a hotline number, and anyone who either needs money for a funeral or who paid it last year can get reimbursed. And I'm going to ask one of my staff to give me the number. Hold on. Because I want to give it to you all. Well, you know what? Peter, I'll send it to you and you can send it out to everybody.
Yes, Michael put it in his newsletter. Thank you, Senator.
Great. Okay, I'll get you the number. But anyway, they can get money and there's a hotline. All they have to do is call the hotline. People speak different languages. A lot of people, no. Okay, so please know that. Okay, two more things. Couple of things we want to do in the next few months. We want to pass the president's big, Bold Back Better Act with lots of infrastructure, job training, childcare, pre-K, lots of that. But three more things I'm working on. I mentioned the first, legalizing marijuana, where the state legislature did a great job. The second, we're trying, Elizabeth Warren and I are trying to get President Biden to forgive $50,000 in student debt. The president can do this with the flick of a pen. We don't need legislation. And we're trying to get 15 million signature, inputs to the president, either an email or a call or a letter. If he did this, this is a racial justice issue. 28% of the wealth gap. So many people of color were taken advantage because they didn't have family. They had the first one in their family to go to college. These disgusting for-profit colleges came in, said, sign up here. It won't cost you anything. And we'll get you a degree and you'll become a this. They never got them the degree. They signed up and they had a huge amount of debt. So 28% of the wealth gap between Black and white people is caused by student debt. So we're trying to get that done. And finally, the Justice in Policing Act. This is aside from the big bills you've read about. This is to deal with the racial bias in law enforcement. And it was put together. I asked Cory Booker and then Senator Kamala Harris to put it together. We were advised by Ben Crump, who is the lawyer for the Floyd family and one of the most renowned lawyers in the country on this issue. And it's really comprehensive and strong. And Cory Booker is working actually with the one African-American Republican Senator, Tim Scott, and we might very much get a bill. We're trying to get it in time for the anniversary of the death of Mr. Floyd. And we're trying to get there to get that done in the next few weeks. So those are some, I have a lot more I could talk about, but I'm gonna give time. I see my friend Brad Lander is on the Zoom, and I don't wanna, since he appointed a lot of you, I guess, right? I better not take up too much time, but I'll be happy, Peter, to answer a few questions if that's okay with Brad.
Eric, you had a question?
Happy to cede all of my time to the majority leader. This is the important stuff.
I did. Thanks, Peter. Senator, thanks very much for joining us and for all the work you're doing in Washington. I had a quick question about the surface transit bill and the historic inequality between highway and transit spending, which has been 80-20. 40 years ago, it was pretty close to even. And I'm wondering what you think the prospects are of getting us back toward more of a fair balance, which
Yes,
would
we are
certainly
trying.
help
I'm
New York.
working. Sherrod Brown is head of our banking committee, which actually, for whatever reason, historical, has a jurisdiction over transit. And we are trying to get our mass transit number way up. I already got, $15 billion for our subway, so they didn't have to close. They wouldn't lay off people and they could begin some capital construction. But we must get more for operating expenses. If we get this Build Back Better bill, which has $2 trillion for infrastructure and with an emphasis on green infrastructure, and transit, of course, is green, we will get a huge amount of money for infrastructure. One of the things I'm trying to do is get all the buses to be clean, electric or eventually hydrogen. They're very polluting. They run through the poorer neighborhoods. People get so much crap in their lungs. They get asthma and everything else. But we want to get a much greater percentage for mass transit and a lot of money, for bicycle. I'm a bicyclist. I am not a spandex person. I'm not going at 40 miles an hour, but I love riding through the neighborhoods of Brooklyn. I stop and talk to people. You've probably seen me on my bike. It's not a pretty sight, but you've seen me on there.
Joanna, you had a question?
Yes, hi, Senator. It's your neighbor from down the block.
Yes.
I'm sure you saw that there was a big party in front of your apartment last weekend around the filibuster.
Yes.
And we've spoken about it before, and we understand your constraints. We know what you're dealing with.
No, we had a good vote.
Yeah, I wanted to hear how that caucus was going. You mentioned a couple months ago that you were trying to get the most progressive folks and some of the more Republican-leaning members of your own party to come together.
So look, S1 is one of the most important bills we can pass because it restores our democracy. I'm going to get to the focal point of it, but it also undoes Citizens United, the horrible place of dark money. It puts in a lot of anti-corruption stuff. Guess what it says in there? Most people don't know. All presidents have to release the last 10 years of their tax returns, you know, when dealing with Congress doing that, making it a lot cleaner. It deals with reapportionment, so they can't screw around with that. But the biggest thing it deals with is voting rights. And as you probably know, these Republican legislatures are trying to take away people's right to vote. Poor people, Black people, young people, urban people. It's despicable. Here's some of the things they're trying to do. In a couple of states, they're trying to say you need a notary public to vote by absentee to come to your house. Now, I'm not unsophisticated. I don't know how to get a notary public to my house, let alone someone who's got to pay money for it and all of that. In Georgia, I'm sorry. Oh, I'm going to take this. This is Amy Klobuchar, whose father passed away. So just give me a minute. See, this is my secret weapon. How do I get, Joanne, all of my senators, including, as you said, I don't email with my folks. I talk to them. This is my flip phone. I know the Amy Klobuchar's number. I knew it is 612-998. I won't tell you the last digit so you don't bother her, but I know every phone number by heart. And frankly, this is a little digression. I have a leadership team. Well, I'll get to that in a minute. So S1 is despicable. They're trying to take away voting rights. They could take away voting rights of 10 million people. You know, in a democracy, when you lose, you're supposed to win the people over who didn't vote for you. In a dictatorship, what you do is prevent people from voting. But this is what am I allowed to curse here? These fucking Republican legislatures are doing. It's just outrageous. It just burns me. Anyway, yeah, we're from Brooklyn. Cursing is all right. But in any case, so we are trying to pass S1, which would do all these good things. Now, you can't do on all the money things, the big spending and the money we talked about for the children and for rent, we can do it by reconciliation. We need 50 votes for that, 51 with Kamala Harris. But with these things, we can't. With non-money things, we can't. So we either need to get 60 Republican votes. And I have a few colleagues who say, let's try to get the Republicans. And I am dubious, but I have to give them that shot. And yesterday we had our first our markup led by Amy Klobuchar, who's head of the Rules Committee of this S1, and not a single Republican voted for it. And they did these nasty amendments. So we're having our first big caucus meeting tomorrow at lunch. To Amy's credit, even though her father passed away, she's going to show up because it's so important to her. And we are going to say, look, failure is not an option. We have to pass S1. I will put it on the floor of the Senate in the next little while. We'll see if any Republicans vote for it. And if they don't, I've told them we're going to have to figure out how to pass it, and everything, including filibuster, is on the table. We have to get it done. And we will get it done. And here's a little digression this is just how the whole place works, so how do I get people to vote for things who come from, okay. I have a leadership team of 10 people, and we meet every Monday night at 4:45. I don't know if I've told you this, Brad, so this is for you as a city council legislator, or Joanne, she's not there anymore. You're both trying to be executives, so this is useless information for both of you. But in any case, I have a leadership team of 10. Who's on my leadership team? Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders, and Joe Manchin and Mark Warner, our two most progressive and our two most conservative. And I asked three things of my leadership team and of every member of the Senate. we treat each other with respect.
About half an hour of it.
We don't say, oh, you did this because you sold out, or you did this because you had no courage, number one. Number two, we realize we try to walk in the other person's shoes. The West Virginia is not New York. But three, we realize that without unity, we are zero. We will get nothing done. And that is the most important lesson. And so far, on every major vote, with all the sturm and drang and all the noise, we have all voted together. We all voted together on impeachment. We all voted together to put in the president's entire cabinet. And we all voted together for ARP. So I'm pursuing that same strategy to get S1 done, but we cannot fail and will not. Who's next, Peter? Where'd Peter go? He's on mute.
I'm sorry, one last question from Karen.
Hi, Karen.
Hi, Senator Schumer. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. My question is a question about SBA. There are a number of businesses that are in minority neighborhoods, and they were turned down already for the targeted EIDL. Do you have any advice on?
Yes,
they're going
I can
to
help you.
appeal?
Yeah, why were they turned? This is the new one because we targeted.
Yes.
Those. I forgot
Yes.
to mention, we passed the Restaurants Act, which is a 6-month grant for restaurants. Tell all the restaurants in the district they should apply. But we also, in the PPP, the small business, we said that minority and women-owned and poor small businesses should apply first, so the big boys wouldn't push them out. And now I didn't know this, so Karen, here's what I'm going to do. I am going to have, if someone will give me the way to reach you, I will have the guy who wrote the whole bill, who's on my staff, named John Cardinal, call you. I'd like to know this, not just to help you, but to figure out what's going on. Why would people turn down? Do you know?
It said that they're not in a minority neighborhood, but they're
Doesn't
in
matter. It should, if they're minority owned, it should apply.
But that's what the letter read. So they sent me their letters. I have them.
Okay. Peter, can I have, with Karen's
Yes, I'll
permission?
have Mike get you Karen's contact information.
Great. Okay, good. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Thank you,
Thank
Senator
you,
Schumer.
Sharon.
Thank you very much, Senator. We really appreciate it. We thank you for taking the time with us tonight. Thank you very, very much. Have a great evening.
Great to talk to my own community board. And I
There
have
you
a
go.
few
We're thrilled to
complaints.
have you. Thank you.
I'm going to call you all up and complain. How's that?
Please do.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, Senator. So we'll hear from Brad Lander if you have any comments to make.
I'll be brief. Thank you, Peter. First of all, I put this in the chat, but Senator Schumer was on the Ezra Klein show recently, and he said some of what he just said, but he gave even more detailed answers on some of the questions about building the majority and S1 and the filibusters. So I think if people are interested in that, you can follow up there. And Nicole Christoul from my office is on as well. She filled me in that at your last CB6 meeting, tenants from 70 Prospect Park West came on and told about the really monstrous situation that they are facing, where this equity investor called Greenbrook Partners bought their building and immediately started not renewing the leases of the non-rent stabilized tenants in the building, which is their legal right. You only have a right to renewal if you're rent stabilized. But if you've been in the building 10 or 15 years, to non-renew the leases because if they throw you out, they can double the rents is really despicable. And so Nicole followed up with them, and they're an amazing set of tenants and doing really powerful organizing. I'm sorry to say this is not a unique situation. Greenbrook Partners has bought up about 60 buildings in our community over the last couple of years. And we believe all with this same strategy. You know, it used to be that these predatory equity investors would go to like Crown Heights and seek to deregulate all the units. But when the state legislature passed the laws in 2019 to strengthen the rent regulation laws, it got harder to kick people out of rent regulated units. And that is great. So folks with this evil business plan and trying to make a lot of money now said, well, where else could we go? And what they've done is come back to neighborhoods like ours and said, if there's a building with half units regulated and half not, we'll throw out all the unregulated tenants and double their rents. And then we'll start doing construction in the building to harass the rent regulated tenants, and maybe they'll leave too. So it's a really serious problem. And I bring it up because we're working together with the tenants of 70 Prospect Park West, with Untu Nguyen, who I think is who came on last time, to do a lot of organizing. So Nicole is leading the way together with Untu. Actually, tomorrow night, we're convening a Zoom meeting of tenants, but it's hard to get tenants in all 60 buildings. So far, 7 or 8 of them have gotten involved. But if you're interested in this, if you think you might know people who are facing a situation like this, if you're worried that your neighbor's building got bought by Greenbrook, we'll ask Mike to include Nicole's information in the newsletter, because we really want to build, a powerful coalition. We think there are some things we can do. There's lawyers involved. Oh, very good. You don't even have to wait for Mike's newsletter. Nicole put her email in the chat. We've got lawyers involved. HPD is involved. We're looking at their investors. One of the investors in Greenbrook is actually the Texas Permanent Schools Fund. Like, school money from Texas is displacing people in Brooklyn. So we're trying to deal with that. And also we're trying to work with our legislators to pass the good cause eviction bill, which would mean that even non-regulated tenants can't get kicked out, just for the whim of an owner. So that's the main thing we've been working on that we wanted to let people know about. We are continuing the work with Neighbor Network. That's this great outreach effort to call originally homebound seniors, but now increasingly just a wide range of people, to give them information about vaccines. So Nicole will put the information about that in the chat as well. If you even have one evening, you could make a phone call and start helping spread the word and try to overcome vaccine hesitancy and get more people to get vaccinated. And obviously, we're going to spend a lot more time in the coming weeks and months talking about the Gowanus rezoning. So I'm not going to talk about it here, except to say I really respect the work this board has done and is doing to take seriously the responsibility to open up thoughtful conversation on the hardest and most important issues. And I am really glad to be a Community Board 6 resident, knowing that you guys are going to subject it to real scrutiny, dig in on the EIS, and ask the hard questions. And I look forward over the next period of time to really following your lead while you are providing an avenue for lots and lots of people to participate, make their voices heard, and ask the hard questions. So I'll stop there. If there are questions, Peter, I'm happy to answer them. If you want to get on with your meeting, Nicole will be here and can follow up with people later.
We wanted to hear now from Ariel Krasnow, who is one of the chairs of our economic.
Peter, did you want me to give did you want to give my portion?
Oh, yes, I apologize. Go ahead, Mike.
Obviously a little lower in the charter than Brad, and certainly the Constitution than Senator Schumer, but I just wanted to give a heads up that I know it's been mentioned, the DEIS, and I'm going to put it in the chat. I've been emphasizing it in the newsletter, but it's like 1,000 pages, the EIS, and it's broken down into different topics for the Gowanus rezoning. And I'd really recommend taking a look at it and reading it over before, because aside from one of the main things that happened when the TRO was lifted in terms of us was the EIS being out there. So, if you have questions, I'd really recommend that. I'm going to put it in the link tree. It also has our comment form, so you could make comments on it. And also, just one event that I wanted to mention: on Sunday, May 23rd at the Old Stone House at 5 o'clock, we are co-sponsoring with a bunch of other civic groups, such as the Park Slope Civic Council, Park Slope Neighbors, Park Slope Parents, and Park Slope Bid, a 39th Council District candidate forum. So that will be in person, and we're still looking at options potentially to stream it as well, but the cost might be prohibitive on that. Anyway, my understanding, and I think one of the candidates is on our board here, Bridget, I believe, is attending, and I think the others are as well. I will put that in there, the link tree, if you want to check it out. It'll be nice. It'll be all safe, and learn about our next who might represent us in the council next. I think it's about like 80% of the CV6 district is the 39th council district. And that's basically it. And I'll put that link. You can also sign up for the newsletter that's been referenced. And if you don't want to click a link, you can always text. BKCB6 to 22828 to sign up for updates. And that is what I've got to say.
Great. Thanks, Mike. So we're going to, Ariel just wanted to tell us about a hearing that her committee had. And while Ariel is speaking, if you're here representing an elected official, if you can please note it in the chat so that we can call on you next.
Hi, okay, we'll try to make this quick because this is sort of an informational.
Yeah, please.
I'm
Not
Carol
too quick.
Krasnett. Can you hear me? Chair of the Housing Committee. The board is an initiative that has been in the works for a number of years. We brought it to the executive committee and started thinking about this in the summer of 2019, which is basically ways to address methods by which components of the Gowanus rezoning would be implemented and maintained and adhered to. And then in the fall of 2019, we refined a little bit more to think about how we would address city commitments, such as what we anticipate related to NYCHA commitments, the Gowanus IBZ, and within the proposed zoning, some of its goals, and also within the DEI, the environmental impact statement, commitments within that. Since at the end of 2019, there was a bit of hibernation here. However, the Gowanus Neighborhood Coalition for Justice was similarly going to study a similar type of an oversight committee. And they dove deep into some of specific considerations that they were interested, as well as to how a type of oversight committee might be organized, and also how to give it teeth. And one of the key components that came out of some of their research was to make it part of the ULEP and make it be part of the points of agreement that occur at the end of the ULEP process. These commitments many of these commitments are going to be itemized in the mayor's office puts out the New York City rezoning commitment tracker itself. But then, the idea is that the community should be able to hold the city to these to what we've all agreed to. So we in our last economic, waterfront, community development, and housing committee meeting, we looked at the idea to put together a working group with a working committee ourselves at CB6, and that's so far that's been me and David Briggs, who's the chair of the Landmarks Committee, and Sharon Beck, who's chair of Land Use. So we have been speaking to some of the members from the GNCJ. We've been speaking to other community members and looking at different models of how a committee like this could be most effective. So in presenting this to the board tonight, we thought we would give the board an opportunity to think about it, and would like to make this official in some manner. Ideally, we had thought we would have a motion at the next EWCDH committee meeting, which is on Monday, and then bring it to the board in June. There's a lot of other things going on, so I don't know if that's the right way to do it, but that's what we had discussed, and we would in June agree to move forward with this and to have this a committee, which we have been calling the Gowanus Zoning Task Force.
Ariel, are you going to put the slide up?
I don't have the slide. I do have the slide. I have it over here.
Or Ty or Mike, can you put the slide up, please?
Well, you know what I'll do? I'm going to hand it over the sort of the most salient points that I've been speaking about. And David, I'll hand it over to you if you want to hit some of the points that I missed, and then we can, if there's time for any questions, we can go ahead and answer some questions as well.
Well, so at a very high level, this Gowanus Zoning Commitment Task Force will be tracking the commitments made by private developers and the city in the points of agreement. It will not be an advocacy group. It will listen to advocacy groups. It will report out on how the commitments are being met or not met. It obviously has to be comprised of different stakeholders in the community. We've drafted a mission statement there, which is just a draft. which essentially summarizes what I just said. And as Ariel said, this predates the recent meetings by a couple of years. As some of you probably remember, we wrote a couple letters when the rezoning came back to life about how we wanted to see, I think we were using the term steering committee at that point, but to oversee how the zoning played out, checking in on every few years. And so tonight, we've had lots of, well, before I say that, we've had lots of conversations, not only with GNCJ, but we've talked to IBZ. I met with the Tenants Association at NYCHA the other day. And everybody has a different perspective, but we do seem to be garnering some support for this, but we wanted to hear from the community board on your thoughts tonight. And then over the next few weeks, Ariel, Alec, and myself, and others, if they wish, will pull this together and make a more formal presentation at the June meeting for a vote of support. And then we would request or demand that this be included, that the creation of this task force and the budget to support the task force is part of the points of agreement for the rezoning. And that's about it. Alec, I don't know if you want to add anything to that, but.
Sure, just briefly, I'll just say the idea here is if the rezoning is passed, and that's a big if, right? We have a whole public process that if the rezoning is passed, as a part of any rezoning, the city and stakeholders make commitments. And we want to make sure that there's a mechanism to hold the city and other stakeholders accountable for the commitments they make as a part of this rezoning, should it be passed. So it's not to put the cart before the horse, but it is to start doing our homework now so that we're ready on this truncated timeline to put together a real proposal that will have teeth, that can try to hold everybody who's involved in this process accountable to the promises they make to our neighborhood. And right now, what you're seeing here on this slide is a sketch, but we're continuing to have conversations to put some meat on the bones. And if you'd like to be a part of that process, you should let us know, and we're happy to answer any questions here today.
Thank you, Alec. Okay, we're going to hear from representatives of elected officials. I saw Dan Wiley, so I'm going to call on him first.
Okay, great. My 3-year-old has a train running in the background. So I wanted to mention that I moved to Park Slope in 1989, but I moved to New York City in 1982. So I thought I'd give my Schumer bio there. I'm with Congressman Nydia Velázquez, and I also want to mention, at the beginning of the month, we did a webinar for restaurants for the Restaurant Revitalization Program, which folks can apply if you're a restaurant or a bakery or a distillery or anyone who basically sells food for people to eat on premise. There is funding from the federal government, which is forgivable. So it's like a grant. And that is $28.6 billion. We actually wanted more money than that. So for the first 21 days, the applications from women, disadvantaged, minority, veteran businesses are being processed first. But this is something that you can apply for online, and it's important to get some assistance. So the small business development centers that are, there's one in Brooklyn at City Tech. You could email me, I'll put my info in the chat if you need the contact over there. Miriam Cologne is very good. And people can get some counseling. You can't get counseling directly from SBA, but you can sign up for SBA webinars if you want to get into how to apply for those. Also, I just wanted to share my screen really quick. CB7, oh, I guess I can't. CB7 has a committee which is a subcommittee focused on last mile delivery logistics. And I know Eric McClure was on the meeting last week while we were at a anti-gun violence rally in Red Hook. We were also streaming this special subcommittee on last mile trucking. So I know Eric is working with CB7 to your south, since these last mile delivery facilities are clustered not only in Red Hook, but across Gowanus Bay in Sunset Park as well. Dove Hertz is building one for Amazon, two for Amazon in Red Hook, and one for FedEx in Sunset Park Industrial Park, in addition to another Amazon site and a UPS site and another site at Buckeye. So I would just say there that, you know, you guys teaming up would be a good idea. And, you know, with Renee Widdison, who was in Carlos Menchaca's staff, we had meetings with some of them and want to follow up. I also talked with Hank Gutman, who's the new DOT commissioner. And he's very interested in how the Freight NYC program and encouraging using the water to deliver things. Jim Tempakis at CB in Red Hook, who has a lot of good ideas. So we've been having a lot of conversations, and I was just commenting to Mike Rasiopo that, you know, DOT is interested in being proactive to the degree they can, and we can bring in EDC and Port Authority. But I would say something that's even more nimble than a study, but is more proactive to actually do something, since these things are coming in as of right. Although I know there's city council legislation to actually require them to jump through some hoops, which is great. So I think the more organizing that the community boards can do on this issue is great. And there was one other thing. Oh yeah, Joanne Simon had mentioned BQE. There are a lot of infrastructure projects coming down. We're trying to see how much we can get in the infrastructure bill. We also have community projects. So for the first time in 10 years, members of Congress can request special projects, community projects, they're called now, as earmarks in the appropriation bills. We don't know if we'll get any of them, but we do have a consortium of community groups throughout Red Hook and Gowanus, 11 community groups actually, to provide youth after school, summer, and paid internships and things to get youth engaged from Red Hook to Gowanus, Wyckoff, Warren. And, you know, this is very important with the rise of gun violence and other things to get young people more engaged again, as the pandemic has had a bad impact. So I just wanted to highlight that, and the fact we have a whole bunch of projects we're hopeful to get funding for. So that's some highlights. Thanks.
Peter, if I could just piggyback on what Dan said about the CB7 last mile trucking meeting. I did represent us there. Samara, to her great credit, has reached out to me about possibly doing some kind of joint meeting with Economic, Waterfront, Community Development and Housing Committee and Transportation on the subject. Possibly we could explore doing a task force with CB7. So there'll be more to come on that.
So what I want to know is why Resilient Red Hook hasn't been told about this. As you know, we have several initiatives going on truck traffic and marine transport. We've been in touch with the borough president, who has asked for our input on this. Why am I not hearing about this?
Hildegard, I'm not sure I can answer that. I was
right. So next time you do something like this, you know we have an initiative, a couple of initiatives running. This goes.
Well, this was yeah. This was CB7 that invited us.
It's disrespectful. You know we've been doing this.
No disrespect intended. It was a CB7 meeting about Red Hook, about Sunset Park. So that's what we were invited for because they know we have similar issues. So we haven't done anything yet on this, but we will know to make sure the Red Hook folks are included.
Resilient
Yeah,
Red
and the
Hook
only thing I would,
specifically.
yeah, and
Specifically.
I would just add, Hildegard, that we've been talking with Jim Tempakis, and I've been calling Geeta Mandan
Jim Tempakis has not mentioned this to me at all.
Yeah, so, but this actually just happened last week, and it was CB7, so it wasn't CB6. And then
Jim
Eric was
Tempakis
the
and I were
guest
in the borough president's office last Wednesday. So it's really not okay that I don't get at least a message from you. Why should I wait for Jim to tell me? You should be speaking to me.
Could we debate this at another time in another venue, please? So that we
Yeah,
can move on
Geeta
with
should
the
call
meeting?
me back. Tell her that.
Geeta is no longer chair. I am chair.
Oh, that's news. Okay, thanks for telling
It's
me.
been going on for a year.
Okay, and Nicole from Brad Lander's office, please.
Oh, Brad already gave all my updates. All good on my end.
Okay. Greer from Senator Kavanaugh's office.
Hello, yes. Good evening, everyone. My name is Grim Mayhew. I am from State Senator Brian Kavanaugh's office. I know there was a couple of state electeds on the line before, so they really went through and the most contemporary updates on what's happening in the state level. But I do have one update that I don't know if they shared or not, but it's the Section 8 applications are opened up. The New York State Homes and Community Renewal is opening a Section 8 waiting list for the first time since 2006 for New York City residents, and it's opening up on May 17th, and it'll close on May 28th. There's more details on their website. The HCR is expecting to receive up to 100,000 applications, and will place 15,000 eligible applicants on its waiting list. All eligible applicants will be prioritized based on HCR's administrative plan, which is established on a number of priority categories. If anyone has any questions, please reach out to our office and we can address you to the right people. And any of the questions, you can feel free to let me know, and I'll put my contact in the chat for anyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other representative of elected officials?
Hey, this is Edward from the mayor's office, Brooklyn Borough Director. Just want to reiterate that getting vaccinated is highly important. Our vaccination efforts are going on strong. As of today, we've administered over 7,228,161 doses, which is more doses than there are people in the whole state of Arizona. Over the course of the last couple of days, we've been rolling out different incentives. If you get vaccinated now, you can potentially get a 2-week membership to City Bike, tickets to the aquarium, botanical garden, and even gift cards to public markets such as Chelsea Market. So if you still haven't gotten vaccinated, you can go at nyc.gov/vaccine finder or by calling 877-VAX4-NYC. Secondly, in 2018, Mayor Bill de Blasio and the City Council Speaker established an advisory commission to develop recommendations to make the city's property tax system simpler, cleaner, fair, while ensuring that there were no reductions in revenues. So now there's a list of like 10 recommendations that are gonna be up for public hearing. In Brooklyn, they're gonna have the hearing on May 27, beginning at 6 p.m. I've sent some of the materials to the board, so if you're interested in seeing the delineation of what those 10 recommendations are, you can reach out to Mike or board staff. Additionally, if you cannot join the Zoom hearing, you could also submit testimony at proptaxinfo@propertytaxcommission.nyc.gov. Lastly, this week we've also been highlighting street safety. And today we announced Open Boulevards, which is a new program which is going to enhance the Open Streets program that we created last year during the pandemic. These boulevards will be different in that they will grant additional dining space, but will also feature cultural activities, community-based programming, landscaping, and other beautification projects. Park Slope will receive some of that. Your open boulevards will be between Dean and Park Place, Sterling and Berkeley Place, President Street and 3rd Street and 10th Street and 13th Street. And so it even goes all the way to Sunset Park, which is my home. So it's going to be very exciting. I look forward to the summer. And as always, folks can reach me at ecerna@cityhall.nyc.gov. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Peter, we've got Nathan Strafinsky from the Borough President's Office.
Great, thank you. Please continue. Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Mike, and thanks, everybody. Yeah, Nate Strafinsky from Eric Adams' office. I just want to thank everybody for their time on the meeting, and then, yeah, feel free to reach out if our office can be of any support. And then, yeah, we're clearly tracking the Gowanus rezoning stuff and many of the other issues that were discussed this evening. So, yeah, please reach out if we can be of support or help otherwise.
Thank you. Anyone else that I missed? Hearing none. Did we have anyone sign up for community session?
Yeah, Kathy Park Price has her hand raised. I'm gonna let her speak now.
Kathy, go ahead. You have 3 minutes, Kathy.
Hey, is there video? Or is it just audio?
I can promote you all the way if you want.
Yes, I'd like video, please. Okay. Okay, thanks. Got to show this visual here for my public comment. Good evening, everyone. My name is Kathy Park Price. I know many of you since I was a member of CB6 and chair of human services until a year ago around this time when I was appointed by the mayor to the panel for educational policy and had to step down as part of that. Good to be here. Tonight I'm speaking to call for the removal of a skate park feature at Washington Park. The skate park is located at 5th Street between 4th and 5th Avenues. There's a design flaw that was brought to my attention today. And so I would like for the feature, the ramp, the quarter pipe ramp, to be taken out of service, renovated so it's a feasible, it's a usable skate park feature, and renovated, and also have a skate park engineer kind of review the entire park and then fund it so that it's properly, that all of the features are safe for the whole community. What happened to me was my son, my 9-year-old son, broke his arm on that skate ramp feature this weekend on Saturday. And it was a great day in Washington Park and Old Stone House. There was a lot going on despite the fact that it was chilly and rainy. I was celebrating the grand opening of the Garden Train Tool Lending Library at Old Stone House with Brad Lander, with Kim Mayer, with all of our community partners on one side of the park. And then we participated in the skate garden, at the skate park event, Skate with Your Mom on the other side of the park, went to the bike jumble. My son broke his arm, an ambulance was called. The picture, which you can see here, is not a Harry Potter creature. That's a 9-year-old's arm. Kids break their arms, but when there's a design flaw, it needs to be addressed. What I was told today by Michael Hurst, a neighbor, was that in 2019, he spoke up at a PB, a participatory budgeting neighborhood assembly, saying there's a design flaw. He had the images of a typical quarter pipe next to the existing quarter pipe and said, this is too steep, it's unusable, it defies physics. He also said the transitions are way too steep, thus making the ramp fairly useless and quite dangerous. He had personal experience as a child and knew from breaking his arm when he was 12, not on that ramp, but another item, that this was an accident, not an accident, dangerous situation. So I emailed all the stakeholders today at 10:30. So it hasn't been 24 hours, it's been 9 hours. I have not heard back. You know, I've emailed everyone from city council on up, parks, CB6, state assembly, state senate, everyone. I heard, thank you, Mike, for texting me at 6:15 tonight to say that it will be escalated to parks. My kids won't be hurt on this feature. They'll never touch it again. So, but I want to call this out. I'm filing, you know, kind of a formal complaint, putting parks on notice about this feature. And I want to make sure that CB6 will take the necessary steps to alleviate this dangerous situation.
We'll certainly do what we can, as Mike said. Obviously, you should, you know, also try and appeal to the other agencies because they might have something that they can do faster. It's not within my power to go over there and dismantle it. I'm terribly sorry, as I told you on Facebook, that your son was injured. It shouldn't happen to any child. And we'll do the very best we can to alleviate the situation. Thanks for bringing it to our attention. We appreciate it.
And Peter, can I just chime in and say, Kathy, I'm here. I'm so sorry about it. And I'll work with CB6 and you and just add my voice to making sure this gets resolved as well.
Thanks, Brad. What's the timeline?
We'll reach out to Parks tomorrow. You know, they're the agency that's got, you know, that is in charge here. So we'll reach out to them tomorrow.
Okay. And will that feature be taken out of commission?
Again, that's a decision that Parks makes the decisions about what's in Parks. What we can do is, you know, relay concerns and complaints to them.
Okay. I would like to find out if there have been other, you know, complaints made about that feature. And, you know, Brad, I know you're a partner and I really appreciate you. Like I said earlier, I was and am so grateful for your leadership and your support of the tool library. I mean, it's crazy that this happened right after you were cutting the ribbon at the tool library. So this isn't, you know, kind of a personal, this is.
No, of course, this is what, I mean, I'm so sorry that we all feel terrible this happened. And of course, we'll, you know, I'll work with CB6. We'll reach out to Parks tomorrow and you know, we take it very seriously. This is, you know, totally.
And it's not about my son's arm.
No, well.
Broken. It's about the rest of the community. And
we don't want any more broken arms
Kathy,
or anything
Kathy,
worse.
we'll do the very best we can. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Is that everyone? Thank you so much. We'll be in touch about the timetable for the Gowanus rezoning as soon as we have the information. Otherwise, I thank you very much for joining us tonight. I truly appreciate it. Thank you.
Give us the dates again. You said you were going to redo you said you would restate the dates for the meeting.
Oh, yes, I apologize. I will do that. Hold on one second. Let me get back to that email. So again, city planning will come to economic waterfront development next Monday. They will come to landmark and land use at their regular May meeting, which is the Thursday before Memorial Day weekend. We will hold a public hearing tentatively scheduled for June 3rd with a rain date of June 10th. The week following the public hearing, the Landmarks and Land Use Committee will meet. That date will be finally determined. And then we are moving our June meeting to June 16th, assuming that we're able to have the hearing on June 3rd. And that is when we will vote on the motion, any motions that come from economic waterfront development, as well as from Landmarks and Land Use. And a reminder again, if you're a member of the public, that only members of the community board can speak at community board meetings. So if you have a view on this subject, we encourage you to voice it at the public hearing because you won't be able to speak at the June full board meeting. And again, once we know more about signing up to make comments on Gowanus, we'll share that information as soon as we're allowed. Thank you all. Have a great night.